Hi, and welcome to a special episode of Entrepreneurship Uncovered, stress management tips for high achieving women. I'm Gabrielle Luoma, CPA, CGMA, and CEO of Mod Ventures. I will be facilitating and joining in this discussion with Erika Eller, certified life and health coach who specializes in stress and burnout recovery. Erika is also the director of operations at Soul Space here in Tucson, Arizona. Before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about Mod Ventures. Mod Ventures is an outsourced accounting and advisory company for businesses across the United States. Our accounting team is fully virtual and it has been since 2014. Our passion is to help entrepreneurs organize, create, and predict their financial futures. We believe that strong small businesses create financially stable communities. Thanks, Erika, so much for joining me today to chat about stress management and how important it is in our lives. You have a story, I have a story. I think it's time to share these stories.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Thank you. Thank you. I've been looking so forward to this. Anytime I get to chat with you, first of all, is just red letter day in my book, but also I really, really love talking all things stress management and how we can prevent a burnout, how we can recover from a burnout, because it seems like that's really the trend right now. Most of the people that I see are pretty much at a burnout or they are very close to a burnout. So at that point, we're really kind of doing damage control and trying to pull things back and help them create a new sense of normal in what stress management truly looks like. And I think, there's kind of the idea, stress management is, maybe taking a bubble bath, having some chocolate, drinking wine, that's kind of like, yeah, that's the self-care. And it can definitely, like, it can be part of it, right? Like those are fun things. It's not a bad thing. But from my perspective, I see how you are living your life, what your calendar is dictating. That's really where it starts. And even before we go there, you have to know your values. If you don't know your values, then you look at your calendar, and I often will ask a client, if I looked at your calendar right now, would it be very clear to me what the most important things in your life are? And 9 times out of 10 people will say no, because it's typically mostly work, mostly business building. But what's important? Their family is important. Their health is important. Their faith is important. Serving in the community, giving back, those things. But those aren't the things that are showing up on their calendars. So that's the work that I do. I really love it. It's very personal to me. Like you said, I have a story, you have a story. How I got into this was all because of my own personal burnout that happened twice, because I'm an overachiever, right? So, I do it once. But my burnout stories were very different. So the first time it was, really falling captive to the idea of what health and fitness look like. And so really thinking that I needed to be exercising all of the time. And I needed to be very, very restrictive with what I was eating. So I fell into that over exercise, under eat pit. And basically I just did so much damage within my endocrine system, and my hormones were just ravaged because of that. And how I knew was I just got very, very, very sick, and so sick that I basically had all the different infections that you could possibly think of at one time. And I was very, very close to being hospitalized. And that was my wake-up call. I couldn't work for 3 weeks straight. I sounded terrible. I felt terrible. I did try to go back because, I have responsibilities and people are expecting things from me. And thankfully, I was in a place where they said, you do not look good. You do not sound good. You cannot be here, and you need to go take time.
So, Erika, let me ask you something really quick. What are the signs of burnout? Because for you, it was pretty serious sickness. What does burnout look like for a lot of people?
Yeah. And in that first piece, I probably wouldn't have guessed it until I literally hit the wall. So immune system, really being impaired, where you feel like you're getting sick all the time, or you can't quite get over something. Like it feels like you always have something lingering. That's a definite sign. I would say chronic fatigue. If you feel like you could take a nap every single day, and it doesn't matter where you're at, you could crawl under your desk, you could put your head on your desk, that's a big sign. Also things that were once fun and exciting to you, it's almost kind of the same as like a depression screening,
Yeah.
really, where you just don't find enjoyment in those things. You find yourself withdrawing, and you tend to have a focus that is on one specific thing. So like for most of my clients, it does come into work, where they are so focused in on their work and nothing else is really getting their attention.
Right.
So I think those are the biggest pieces. Also just paying attention to how your body is telling you that something's out of alignment. When you are in a chronic stress response, your body will let you know. So that can come in the form of not sleeping well, interrupted sleep. Either you have a hard time getting to sleep, a hard time staying asleep, or you wake up feeling unrested. Those are kind of some big things. Headaches, starting to get headaches, starting to feel tension and pain in your body. That's going to be a big one. And then gut dysfunction. If you notice some big differences in digestion and like stomach pain, intestinal flare up, anything like that, like your bowel movements are not the same as what they were, they're worse, or even a little bit better sometimes, because constipation is like a big thing. So
yeah, like so my parents tend to tell me about everything now, so I'm getting to the age where I hear about a lot of things like that. So
but it's important, like gut health, like that's the big piece. But also, I mean, like if you're just feeling more emotional feeling, and I think the other piece a lot of people tell me is the sense of feeling out of control.
Yeah,
that's probably like when you're feeling that pretty frequently, that is your sign to reevaluate what's going on.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole lot of different things, and they could be anxiety, it could be depression, it could be a lot of different things, or the overwork or the stress could cause all those things. So I think that that there's so many indications, right? And they get really, really mixed up. So what is your recommendation for people who are just like, I don't even know where to begin?
Well, the interesting thing is there has been research that's been done pretty extensively that actually shows that over 90% of disease across the board, the root cause is going to be stress and inflammation.
Wow, 90%.
90%. So I mean, like that can be like anything from like, cardiac to like diabetes, autoimmune disorders, cancer. Like they're finding like there are so many different pieces there that have to do with stress. And so I think, if you're finding yourself kind of in the season where it's like, oh, like I've never struggled with this before, I've never had to manage this before, that's a good indication. Like if your blood pressure is changing, if your cholesterol is changing, if your blood sugar is changing, that's a real good sign that there is something going on, and it's most likely going to be stress. And the other thing that I want to mention is that it's not a simple one-pronged approach. Like within health, I am a big believer of functional nutrition, functional medicine, integrative health, because it addresses the symptoms from a variety of standpoints. So looking mentally, emotionally, physically, and then within the physical piece, that it's, like what's happening in all the body systems,
right?
And where can we start? So it's multiple layers, but I think really like evaluating lifestyle is going to be a really good first step.
Right. Well, I mean, I love your story, and I know you've been heavily impacted by, family members and situations. So I know that this is something that's really, really important to you. And, what would you tell somebody who just isn't taking the time to take care of themselves? And
Yeah.
yeah, what would you tell them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I've had this like very, very personal, um, in that my husband died 5 months ago
Yeah,
from a massive heart attack.
yeah.
And the biggest, key thing with that is that stress was absolutely the culprit. He had been struggling for quite some time with just the stress of his work and dealing with that. And so, like me as the coach, like I'm trying to help, but also like I was his wife, and
Yeah.
that's not necessarily the
Sure.
best person.
Yeah.
I can it's like that whole saying of, you lead the horse to water, but you can't
Right.
make him drink, right? And that's really what happened with Jeff, is that, giving him the tips and the ideas, but he really had a hard time grasping the idea that he had agency in his own stress management.
Yeah.
And so I see clients on the daily
Mhm.
that come in and that they feel like there isn't something that I can do. And I have to say that right there is a thought. And
Mhm.
if you are leading with that thought, you are automatically putting yourself into a stress response, because you're basically saying, like, this is a dangerous situation. This feels terrible. I don't want to be doing this, but I can't do anything about it.
Right.
And real or imagined, your brain cannot determine the difference.
Mhm.
And so immediately you go into a stress response. So exactly the same as if you were being chased by a lion, that escaped the zoo, your body is thinking, you need to run, you need to fight.
Mhm.
So it's utilizing resources, which looks like, the adrenaline
Yeah.
is increasing, your cortisol is increasing, your blood sugar is increasing,
Mm.
so that you can move quickly.
Yeah.
But we're not running from lions. We
Right.
are just responding to a million emails. We're being distracted 1,000 times a day. Our
Right.
focus is all over the place. Our time is not being held um, in a place that is honoring within boundaries, right? We don't have boundaries within our time. And it's really just kind of a free for all for everyone. And so with Jeff, I mean, that was the thought, is I can't change this. How can I change this? And so we started to see some shifts in his health. And in January of 2023, he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, with an A1C of 11. I mean, it's really, really high.
Yeah.
And his doctor had said in January, like, you have to do something about this, because this is not a good situation.
Mhm.
And what I would always tell Jeff, because he would say, and I hear this from my clients as well still, is that um, there is literally nobody else that can do what I do.
Mhm.
And I would tell him, if something happens to you, they will find a replacement.
Mhm. Yep.
Your job will be covered. I cannot replace you.
Right.
And unfortunately, like, that's the place that I'm in right now.
Right.
And it was so hurtful to me, because literally less than a week after he died, Gabby, they posted his position on LinkedIn.
Mm.
And that was like such a gut punch to me, because it was literally the exact same thing. And so I would say, like, if you're feeling like you're in that place, like, I can't do that, like, this is too much, but I can't make a change. You have to make a change.
Yeah.
You have
No
to make a
choice.
change.
Right. Mhm.
And so for me, in my own personal stress management, and seeing how it impacted Jeff, and losing Jeff, for me, like, it's very personal in my own health, in that
Mhm.
literally, like, I have to be responsible for this. This is my job. And it's my obligation. I owe this to myself as well.
Mhm.
Um, and if I'm not here, like, what
Right.
happens to my kids? Like,
Right.
where are we at there?
Mhm.
And um, just really understanding that life is precious, and it's meant to be enjoyed.
Right.
And that's what I see so many people like high performing. And I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this personally where
Yeah.
you're not enjoying the dream that you're building.
No, I've been in really crazy situations where, yeah, it's definitely a stressful time. And, there's challenges that come up and, the ruminating, the being hard on myself, all those different things that have affected my own health. And, I've had to make some pretty serious changes in the last, 3 to 6 months because of all the damage I've done over the years, not really paying attention to my health, and just eating handfuls of M&Ms whenever, and then some, there's all kinds of things that I did. But, I think the biggest thing for me was that I did not handle my thoughts as well as I could have, and I believed a lot of things. And you really have to, if you want to manage your stress and manage the just the mindfulness part of your life, you have to be very, very specific on how you do it.
Yeah.
And not allow, put those boundaries up, not allow for, certain things to arise in your life just because it's number one, not in your best interest. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned really over the last 3 to 6 months is that I'm also putting boundaries for myself in that I am not going to live a certain way because I want to be around for my family. I want to live a healthy life. I don't want to just exist.
Right.
So there's lots of learning lessons in that, really making those decisions and doing what's right for not only myself, but my future self. And I always think about that now. And my health journey has been up and down, my whole life.
Yeah.
But now I feel like I have put some habits in place that I can really maintain and keep going with and help with the stress management. But yeah, every morning it's affirmations. It's, doing a little bit of prayer and meditation in the morning so that I'm prepared for the day. It's really thinking about how I can manage my stress level and how I feel throughout the day. I mean, bring on menopause. I mean, it's coming and there's a whole nother change of emotions and
right.
hormones and all kinds of things that happen. And so, maybe what I did, 15, 20 years ago is not going to work now. So,
and that's important that you mentioned that, because I think we kind of have this idea of like, well, this is the way it was for me when I was 25.
Yeah.
And you go into like your 30s and your 40s and your 50s still with that like same mindset, and it's different there. You're in a different season, your body is different, like metabolically. And we also just have to consider like what is happening around us and pay attention to that. And you talked about like the thoughts, and I have to say this is probably the most important work. And yes, I will help someone with let's talk about nutrition, let's talk about ways to build in some movement. And also the way that I coach, it's not like we're going to completely 180 this on you. Like that's not sustainable, right? And I think that's probably like the way like the diet culture has kind of made that this thing for us. If we make a change, it's got to be like a complete shift. But I think, and what I've found is that you have success when you're building in small, sustainable habits that you can build on. And when you're like, oh, I've mastered that, like this is so crazy easy.
Yeah.
Now we can add in this.
Right. Yeah, totally. I think that's the big, aha moment for me. It's the smaller things that add up over time. And, I remember like in the 90s and even early 2000s, I think we were told to go and just work out like crazy, burn fat, sweat like crazy.
Cardio forever.
Yeah, like cardio, And for women that are, having endocrine systems or having burnout or stress, situations. I don't even know how to exactly say all of it, but they're experiencing stress responses and things like that. Working out super, super hard is not going to work for you. It's actually going to make you gain weight, right? Because your body is stressed out. And so it's like,
that's one of the things that, when I kind of do a full assessment with someone that's under a lot of stress, is I will ask, like, what does your exercise look like? And a lot of them, it's really interesting, is that they do try, and it's either like one end of the spectrum or the other. Is like, I have no time to do anything, like I don't have energy to do anything, or I gotta go kill it and do, like these like Orange Theory type of classes, or like CrossFit, like it's very like high intensity.
Yeah.
And that is the opposite of what your body needs. When you work out, you are creating a stress response. You are putting your body under stress. Your body is responding to meet that demand. And like, that's not a bad thing. But think about, like, if you're like at that level all the time, 24/7, like that's basically what you're doing. And you're just kind of fueling the fire, and it's just growing and it's growing.
Yeah.
And so I tell people to pull it way back, and I say, let's try some restorative exercise, like walking. Like, can you walk, maybe twice a day, maybe for 15 minutes each, or start at like 30 minutes, or, something like that. Or like yoga is great. Pilates is, very like restorative, slow, focused on the breath. That's the biggest, like, we're not breathing. And
I know. Now I'm like, whew, I gotta take a breath.
I know, right? You got to pay attention. Yeah.
Oh, everybody take a breath. Yeah.
It's all like so important. And it just kind of goes back to that. It's not, like, do this one thing, you do this one thing and everything is fixed. Like, the one thing might help. It might start to move the needle, but you really need a few different things in place to really move the needle.
Yeah. So I saw a study the other day that was like 2 minutes of walking actually reduces the chances of cancer by a lot. Like, I don't know the exact percentage, but like, it's the small things that make a difference and add up.
Yeah, it's that cumulative effect, right? That compound effect, that it just builds. And we tend to dismiss those small things because we feel like, especially if you are a high achiever, right? A lot of ours is like very big, right? We're doing big projects. We're working on big things. We have big vision. But what if we embrace the idea that these small things are cumulatively adding to our overall health?
Yep. I think that's been, that's a life lesson that, has happened over time for me, is just realizing, you are doing big things and you want to do big things, but those big things don't necessarily happen overnight, right? I didn't get my CPA license overnight. It took years of studying and practice, learning how to do things, and it took you a while to get through your college education and to the point where you have experience to talk about the things now. So I think it's something that we all have to keep in mind, especially those in their, I would say, 30s, because the 30s is where you go hard. You're building a family and you're trying to do all the things. You're trying to build your career, all of the things. So, your 30s and your 40s, definitely take it in increments, because you're not going to miss anything, it's fear of missing out, right?
Yeah. And I think there are so many lessons to be learned in every single one of our seasons. Right? Like, take something and think about how it made you grow, how it made you change, how it made you discover what you do want, what you don't want. Like, there's a lot of that. And I think when we experience so much stress, we're not doing that assessing, because we're just going, it's like literally like just continue walking, just continue taking a step. You're not stepping back and saying, but like, wait, what have I done? It's always like going towards the next thing. And, you know, like, I feel like grief has really taught me to like slow down,
Yeah.
to appreciate like the wins of, and for me, like, it is literally like a day by day thing.
Yeah.
You know, where like some days are like terrible and some days are good. And then I'm like, hey, wait, like, you did a 2-mile walk today. Like, you had the energy for that. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But it's also made me think about really, really designing a life that I love, not that I want to run away from.
Right. Yeah. I've seen that quote. I don't know who even wrote that, but the quote of, you know, designing a life that you want to be.
I say it all the time, literally all the time, to every one of my clients.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what would that look like? What would it look like if you truly designed a life that you loved and you didn't want to run away from? And that really kind of opens some good conversations.
Yeah. I would say, you know, whoever's watching, go and write this question down.
Yeah.
Because this is something that, you know, you should be reflecting on at least once a week, maybe once a day, depending on what season you're in. You know, I think we don't self-reflect enough because we are so busy, you know, taking care of family and pets and husbands, and, you know, we're clients, we're taking care of everybody, and we're not reflecting enough back on what we need
Right.
in order to have that designed life that we're really looking for. So I think that's such a great way to stop and reflect. So
yeah.
What other nuggets do you have? What other reflection questions do you think we need to be asking ourselves? We're recovering from burnout, trying to stop ourselves from being burned out. What types of things do you think?
The other thing is, you know, so when I first start to work with a client, we kind of do a lifestyle assessment and really like, what are you responsible for? What are the things that you wish you didn't have to do? What are the things that you're doing that can definitely be delegated? And that, you know, can be like on the home front, but also like work wise. But also in that, you know, listing everything out. And this was really powerful for a client of mine recently. And she did this, like all of the things that she is carrying. And she sent it to me. So I have my clients do homework. And so she sent it to me. And I wish I was joking, but it was literally like me scrolling. It was scrolling and scrolling. And she was great, but she had them all like in buckets, you know, like, this is like the kids, this is, you know, my practice, my medical practice, this is, you know, what's happening with like extracurricular, this is me being responsible for my parents, like all of the things, marriage. So and just asking her, like, where do you see an opportunity for margin in your calendar with all of this? And I mean, that's why she came to me, because she wasn't feeling the margin. So I said, the margin is necessary. Rest is necessary. So what will you drop? It wasn't, you know, like, what do you think you should, or do you think you can? It's no, like, what will you drop? Because you cannot carry all of this.
Right.
And so I said, imagine that you are walking down the house, walking through your house, and you're literally like picking up everything that is in your vision. So, you know, like, maybe it's a shoe on the floor, maybe it's a picture that's hanging on the wall, maybe, you know, it's a candle that's sitting on it. Like, you're literally, anything that your eye comes across, you pick it up and you're holding it. And I said, how far do you think you would get from one end of the house to the other? Like, do you think you could get to the other, like, carrying everything? She said, absolutely not. And I said, that is exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so for her, that was like that big aha. So like, asking yourself, like, what am I carrying and what am I going to let go of in order to create margin?
Right. And making the commitment to do it. Right. I think so many times women, especially if you're career, minded and you're working and so many of us are working full time and have a family and all of that, is that we tend to think that we're the only ones that can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the number one thing. I think we think we're the only ones can do it. Number two, you look weak if you ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are the things that I've learned. I'm an expert delegator. I have been very, very good at doing that over
That's amazing.
my life, because most of the time we've had somebody help us with our house. We've had times where we've had help with our meals. Of course, we've had childcare when we needed it.
Mm-hmm.
We've had assistance, all kinds of different things in order to help us keep the family going.
Yeah.
Because there was no way that I could run a business full time and do all those things. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So
Well, like what you do, what you offer, how, like,
yeah,
business owners, like, stop trying to like manage your finances and
right.
everything.
Too many hats. Mm-hmm.
Like, give it to somebody, like, that is their expertise, that is their specialization. And then, like, you're thinking about the cost, right? Like, what's the cost? Well, what is the cost of you burning out?
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you it's going to be so much higher
Yep.
than what it would be like to hire someone for expert financial advice and planning and like running that part of your business.
Yeah.
And we cannot be experts in all the things.
Mm-mm.
Believe me, I've tried. There's still a little bit of that, like, I'm still trying, to some degree.
Hey, high achieving women, right?
I'm just interested in all the things.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, like, this is not a joke, but like, I was talking to my financial planner, and I'm just like asking him about, like, well, how'd you get into this? And he's explaining like how he's going to manage my money. And so then I just became fascinated. I'm like, I could learn how to do this. And I'm like, why? But why? Like, am I really interested? But like, I am interested in it. Like, I feel like it's important for me to know.
Right.
And have that financial literacy. But like, do I need to know it at the depth that he does?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the thing. And I think that's a lot of my story too, is that I understand that I can't carry all the hats. And so, you develop people around you so that they can take on some of those hats. But you also, for small business, it makes so much sense to outsource and find, people to help. And that's what I've done, like I said, almost all of my career. And so for me, it's a real, meaningful thing for us to come and take over a hat for somebody, because I know what it's like to carry so much, so it's definitely a passion of mine, to help people feel better and in that way.
Yeah. And I think that that's so special. I mean, to like understand, to have that empathy, right? And I feel like that's what makes me a good coach, is I've been through it.
Yeah.
But I am just so honored and humbled when someone asks for my support.
Yeah.
And it's, I am not giving you like, these are the 3 things that you're going to do, but it's really like helping you to figure out what you want in your life, what's important, because what's important to me may not be at all important to you. But you have to know where your values lie. And that's the important piece. Sometimes like we're just not intrinsically like introspective. And so having someone to give you those prompts, to ask the questions like, well, what do you put down? And what would it look like to create a life that you loved and didn't run away from?
Right. Yeah. I need to use that when I'm, talking to business prospects. What would it look like for you to live the life of a business owner that's going to be, in love with their business? Because honestly, I think it applies both ways. So, your health and your business life. So,
and personally too. I mean,
personally, for sure.
Like having, relationships with your spouse, with your kids, like that all takes intention.
Yes.
And I really feel like when you're intentional in those areas of your life, like, that's where you see like the true cultivation, that's where you see the growth.
Yeah.
Rather than, it's like putting a plant in the ground, never watering it, keeping it in the dark,
Doesn't
you know,
help.
like nothing. It's going to look like all my plants outside right now. Like, it's
Yeah.
going to be terrible. No,
Yeah.
like you have to like fertilize and, water it and put it in its ideal location for it to thrive and,
Mhm. Okay.
create an environment.
So all high achieving women have to get a plant and nurture it.
At least
That's
10.
what you're saying.
Least 10.
I hear you saying that. Okay. Okay. I got
Yeah.
you.
So yeah, you take from this whatever you will. If it means, or go buy more books, like that's my thing. Books and plants.
Yep. Yep. But it's so true. And I love that you use that analogy because it's true. Like we have to be in the perfect environment for ourselves, for us to thrive and proper watering and feeding and drink lots of water, all that.
All
So
of it.
it's so important, to our thriving and keeping up our high achievement mentality
Yeah.
and mindset. So, Erika, this has just been a pleasure. I love chatting with you. I could probably do it another hour.
Oh,
In fact, every week, let's just get on and do this.
yeah. Topic of the week.
The
How
topic
fun
of the
would that
week.
be?
Yeah, for sure. But I think it's so important to, whatever stage in life you are, to really evaluate where you're at and, keep this conversation in mind because you're right. You can't replace yourself typically in your family. It's something that's very, very difficult to do. Usually that doesn't even happen, right? Doesn't happen. You can't replace yourself.
Yeah.
You're irreplaceable.
Yeah, it can't be replaced.
So, so important that we keep that in mind as we're uh, properly and caring for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this conversation with Eric and I. It's been a pleasure. If you have gotten a lot of tips out of this, which I am sure you have, make sure that you like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week at another episode of Entrepreneurship Uncovered.
Thanks.